Welcome to the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast, where all things football are injected right to your veins, with your hosts, Matt Donnelly, Calvin Shoemake, and Jeff Mueller.
What is up, and welcome to another very special episode of the Dynasty Vipers Spotlight Series. We are excited to be talking about a team that just happens to be making a lot of news today in our Houston Texans. I'm joined by an awesome guest. If you guys are in watching the stream, get in the comments. Make sure you say what's up, tell us hi, ask some questions, make some comments, whatever it is. We're gonna definitely get into it. Before we introduce our guest, I just want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing here. We're going through all 32 teams and spotlighting them all. Look, when we get into Dynasty football and we get into January, February, it's obviously we're going to start talking about the draft. We're going to talk about, things like, the prospects and grading them out and like all those different things. But it's also really important that we understand the teams that they find themselves into. So we want to make sure we bring on guys that understand the game, understand football, and that are fans of the team, because nobody knows your team the way you do. You know your team. So with that, we are welcoming in Mr. Aggie Kappa Sig, I guess. Is that your Twitter account? Tell us who you are. Tell us about yourself and what you're working on these days.
For sure. First and foremost, thank you for having me on to talk about my Texans, man. Y'all do extremely good. Your content is awesome. So love diving into the new this is my first year doing IDP, so I'm definitely gonna have to check out your stuff. Very interested to talk to you about that in the future. But if y'all don't know who I am, my name is Christopher Pinto. I'm the senior fantasy sports analyst for Belly Up Sports, Belly Up Fantasy. My moniker down there is at Aggie Kappa Sig. I kept it, from college. Went to Texas A&M. I'm a Kappa Sig, so kind of just flowed together, which is very ironic for the head coach that we're going to talk about being a coach at A&M under R.C. Slocum back in the 90s. So long history that we'll talk about for the new head coach for the Houston Texans. But what I'm working on right now is me and my guys at Belly Up Fantasy Live, Billy, Tom, and Ryan, man, extremely hardworking guys. We're looking to crank out more content. Obviously, we're growing the team, and we're expanding our sports repertoire, essentially. We're sticking to football for sure, but now we're branching out to hockey, basketball, baseball, things like that. And then along with our Belly Up Fantasy podcast network in general, they're blowing up. I mean, we're getting a new podcast every day. So guys, go check out Belly Up Sports. We are what they aren't. So come have a good time with us.
And it is at Belly Up Sports, right, on Twitter?
That is correct.
Yeah, make sure you check those guys out. Yeah, excited about the content that you guys are going to be. Look, the off season is where with Dynasty, that's why we get into it, right? We want to pay attention to this stuff. We want to make sure that we are, looking at the off season, all the different aspects. And I don't know that any team has been more front and center than these Houston Texans. But before we get into the news, tell me a little bit about your history with the Texans, because the Texans are a little bit different team than we've talked about so far. Not quite the history. So obviously, I'm sure you had a favorite team before there was a Houston Texans. So just tell us about like how'd you become a Houston Texans fan and all that?
So I'm born and bred in the Houston area. The Woodlands is probably 45 minutes outside of Houston. It's pretty much just a suburb of Houston these days, an extension of Houston, right? Man, growing up, being in the industry that my dad was in, he was in the food service industry. So he had a catering company that used to cater to a lot of different big name people, including the Houston Oilers. I remember just these huge guys, calves like as big as my head, right? Walking around and my dad just serving them and things like that, getting to talk to these guys. It was really cool. And that kind of brought me into the whole football aspect. My dad never played football, right? He was a soccer guy. So every Sunday for us, it was soccer on TV. And it wasn't my thing. I just didn't jive with it. But when I started watching football, man, I loved the cracking of the pads, the coaching strategies, the finite points of the game, right? That make football. and I just fell in love with the Oilers. I fell in love with the running game, and then they broke my heart. They moved to Tennessee. They became the Tennessee Titans through a wild turn of events with the Browns leaving and going to, I'm sorry, everyone too, who's watching this. I'm normally more professional than this. I've been doing a lot of podcasts this week and a lot of recording. So this is my 5th podcast in 4 days. My light that I normally use, the light overheated last night and snapped in two, essentially shattered. So I'm kind of rigging up. I've got Legos over here with a camp light up here. And then I just went to Target and got like a little ring light over here. So you'll have to bear with me. I'm sorry about this, guys. I'm still trying to figure it out. This is my first year doing this, so I apologize.
No worries at all, man. No worries at all.
But so back to the Cleveland Browns, right? They left, and the league promised that in 3 years they would return, but they had to get even amount of teams, right? Make it up to 32. So here comes Houston entrepreneur bidding for it. Couldn't get the NHL team to Houston. But let's get the franchise back. Let's get a football team back. Let's do this for our fans. We have the Dallas Cowboys, right? And everyone knows it's America's team, right? Blah, 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 blah. Well, Texas is a state divided. Texans and Cowboys, essentially, right? And the Cowboys talk, the Texans talk. We've got an elite quarterback. They've won Super Bowls, blah, 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 blah. It goes back and forth, but it's a really good time. So our first quarterback, right? The car, leading the league in sacks. So the offensive line, obviously, you get heartbroken there too, because you fall in love with the Carr brothers, right? Both of them, they're very personal. They're good guys, they're good people, and they work really, really hard. And that's what we like here in Texas, to grind it out, right? We want to work and we want to be the best at what we do because of the work that we put in. And he did it, but just a bad situation, right? The offensive line was really bad. A lot of mistakes, a lot of penalties, a brand new franchise, right? With guys who've never played together before, or given multiple years to play together, even with the coaching staff, right? So a lot of growing pains, things like that. And finally, we hear a touch of greatness, right? You get the offensive line good, you get the defense right, and you get Arian Foster at running back. I remember one of my first fantasy football drafts, I had to get Arian Foster, so I got him, and he took me to the promised land, helped me win my first championship. As a Houston Texans fan, I was sold on fantasy football, obviously, right then and there. And then the poet leaves, right? Just time flies, and we get some new guys, right? We get a new hot quarterback who just comes off of a national championship win. We already had Nuke Hopkins, right? And things are clicking. Greatness is coming, and we're toying with greatness. We're like falling just a step behind, but toying with greatness, right? And so, being a Houston Texans fan, I don't know. Have you ever been to Disney?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you'll know what I'm talking about. The Expedition to Everest ride, right? I'm also a big Yeti and Sasquatch fan. Like I watch all that stuff on History Channel, the documents. Love that shit, right? Okay. Yeah. So Expedition Everest was one of the rides I had to get on because it's got the Yeti on it, right? You get to see the Yeti. You're kind of checking out Tibet and going up the mountain, seeing everything. And it's real slow, right? But you're just kind of going along. That's kind of like the Houston Texans ride. Like you're going up, you're like, yeah, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. And then you start hearing the Yeti. And you start seeing some stuff. And right when you get there, boom, it sucks you back so fast. And it's just almost heartbreaking, right? You're like, oh, I can almost touch it, but I can't get it. And that's what happened to us again when Bill O'Brien traded away Nuke Hopkins, man. And it hurt the Texans loyal deeply. I mean, a lot of my friends and fraternity brothers are diehard Texans fans and just absolutely spat on Bill O'Brien. And nothing against Nuke, right? There's nothing really he can do. And Deshaun saw this. I mean, front office didn't tell him. He's had to see this on social media. So that's one strike really against the multiple strikes. But, and well, first and foremost, whoever is handling social media and press for the Houston Texans, they need to get them into politics because there's stuff going on behind this closed doors that no one has seen or even heard of. So get them into politics ASAP. But you flash forward now and, the guys up top, we're not going to name names here because I'm a Texans fan, right? I live in Texas, probably I live an hour away from the stadium, so I can't be dropping names right about now. But the front office takes Deshaun Watson out to dinner and courts him, right? Hey, man, we get it. We wasted a season. We want you to be at the table and tell us how to make this better. We want to do this with you. And what do? They don't do anything. They hire this outside company to come in. They pay them hundreds of millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars to do their job. And what, like 2 weeks later, they cut them, they fire them, and then they let the front office decide who becomes the head coach. Granted, the head coach now is a fine man. We saw what he did in the SEC at Vanderbilt, being the first black quarterback at Vanderbilt, and had extremely good success. He's a hard worker. He's going to do a great job, and we'll talk about what he's going to do for the Texans when we get to the draft part. But he is a front runner, and he's what the Texans need right now to essentially clean shop and build from the ground up. He is a foundational stone for the Houston Texans team. And I mentioned his lineage earlier to A&M when he was a wide receivers coach for Texas A&M under R.C. Slocum, who had a great defense, the wrecking crew, if you would, on the defensive side of the ball. And then also a high-powered offense that would run the ball down your throat. So it makes me wonder what he's really coaching if he's a wide receiver coach, and he keeps being a wide receiver coach throughout his tenure, going into the NFL and having a great tenure in the NFL under Andy Reid, right? Learning from him. Then his stint in Baltimore, most currently, right? And he's just coaching these wide receivers to be in a run-first offense, right? You would think. Is Houston going to go that way, which I really hope so. I was tuning in, obviously, to the previous show. Shout out to all those guys that were on here. Phenomenal. All y'all killed it, man. Tyler, George, and Troy, man, on point. Absolutely loved y'all's stuff. But I think – I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Really, yeah, no, I appreciate you saying all that. I appreciate the kind words. And before we get into, this new season and the new coach, I want to just maybe backtrack a little bit and just talk about the 2020 season, because I do think there was a lot of high expectations going into the year. I mean, we're talking about, it was literally, what was the first part of 2020 that the Texans had a 28-0 lead against the Chiefs in the playoffs. I mean, we're not talking about a team that was, ready to bottom out. I mean, it certainly didn't appear that way. And then you trade your second best player in Nuke Hopkins. You get back David Johnson, and things didn't quite work out well in the running game. 31st in rushing attempts, 31st in rushing yards, 30th in rushing TDs. But a lot of that is, man, the schedule in the first part of the season was brutal. So just talk to me a little bit about, 2020. You got a coaching change. You got a lot of things mixed up in there. But what was the 2020 season like as a Texan fan?
Man, the 2020 season as a Texan fan was brutal. Not a lot of high points, not a lot of stuff that we could hang our hats on. A lot of potential, like I mentioned earlier, toying with greatness, right there. We're just a step behind, right? We need to shore up our offensive line for sure, fill some holes on defense, and then just straight up get a new quarterback. I love Deshaun Watson, nothing against him, but he's just got to go, right? We'll talk about the cap and everything like that, but he's a big financial burden on the cap for the Houston Texans. Not that he's not a generational player and we don't deserve him. We don't deserve him. But he's a generational talent, and he deserves to be somewhere where he can win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. But yeah, the 2020 season, you got to look at the body work. We haven't had a season like this since 2017. Third in our division, 4-12. Getting spanked by the Titans, getting spanked by the Colts, barely beating the Jags, who are hanging on by a limb. And you got the coaching change. You got Big Rome up there. You got to like Big Rome. The Texans like Big Rome. Obviously, the defensive guys like Big Rome. And what he's done on that defense is phenomenal, too. We pretty much had, practice squad linebackers and a third-string linebacker in there all year, and they're getting boys on the defensive side of the ball. Our linebackers were probably one of the strongest things on our defense, if you don't include J.J. Watt, right, and that defensive line. But that front seven was really, really good. I'm really excited to see what our new coaching changes will happen here in the near future. There's a lot of rumors going around on what kind of defensive coordinators we're going to get, what OC we're going to get, because remember as well, our head coach right now, he's only been a wide receiver coach. He's never been an offensive coordinator. He's never been a defensive coordinator. So he's going to need some help. But I'm hoping that the Texans will figure it out. Our financial guys up top are really, really good, or they need to be really good. We need to go outside our office right now and figure this out, because we got a lot of dead money and a lot of free agents. And the free agent pool right now is immaculate. I mean, we can have a lot of 1-year deals, a lot of 2-year deals, a lot of stuff can happen right now, and the Texans need to get it together. And I'm hoping that our new GM will get it together.
Well, let's dive into that coaching staff, because I think it all starts right there. And certainly when we think about our, this is Dynasty Vipers, so we're talking about, we don't want to understand the team, we want a little bit of a fantasy spin too, but like understanding these coaches, it's going to be a little hard with David Culley, because we don't, like you said, like he's been a wide receiver coach, and we know that he spent some time with Andy Reid. We know that he was, over there in Baltimore, obviously, where that was kind of a run first team, like you said. So does that does that begin to shape the narrative, or is this kind of one of those things where we have to wait until we see what the weapons look like before we figure out what he's going to do? The good thing is, it looks like Tim Kelly is retained. So, I mean, there's at least some continuity there. I would say he was a pretty good offensive coordinator, even though, maybe he didn't have the tools to properly work with maybe in the running game. But obviously did great things with Deshaun Watson. We were not expecting Deshaun Watson to be back. But whoever is there, I like Pep Hamilton. He's coming in to work with the quarterbacks. He just obviously worked with Justin Herbert. So just talk a little bit about, like, you mentioned the coaching staff. What do you like about the changes? What are you hoping maybe they still do? Or, just talk about the coaching staff over there.
So I like Pep, right? Justin Herbert played out of his mind. Obviously, the kid's smart. He's got all the intangibles, right? And the offensive line there was great. Offensive line is what we need to address. I know we've got some good guys on there. Nick Martin, phenomenal. But we need to have some depth out there. I mean, 3 of our guys were on IR half the year, and we're rotating offensive line like their defensive line. And it's ridiculous. You got to have continuity on that offensive line. And Mike Devlin is the guy that needs to be talked about, because he hasn't had a solid offensive line. And I get it. It's not his fault. It's not anyone's fault, right? Injuries happen, but you gotta get this guy some more weapons for that offensive line, because with the trade of Deshaun Watson, that's most likely going to happen. We're going to bring in a young quarterback out of Miami, and he's going to need an offensive line that can block for him. And now my mindset is on this coaching staff, what David will do is run the ball. We're going to get that number 3 pick as well. We'll talk about that later. God, this show has me so jazzed up, man. Like, this is so awesome. I absolutely love this right now. Our defensive side, though, I know you're IDP guys, right? Our defensive side of the guys, our defensive coaches, one not to be named, needs to keep his pills to himself, first of all. Keep it away from the players. But our defensive guys, Bobby King, man, this guy has lit it up, coaching whatever he's been doing with these guys. Like, phenomenal linebacking core right now, solid front seven. Our DBs do need work, and we'll address that in the draft or even in free agency. Carl Smith too. Put some respect on that man's name. Carl Smith, the offensive consultant. He doesn't have a huge title or anything like that, but a lot behind the scenes for the Houston Texans that we don't see. Other than that, it's going to be a lot of moving pieces, because I feel like, or like a domino effect. One thing is going to happen, and Deshaun Watson is going to get traded. It's going to be a mega deal. We saw what the what the Cowboys did with the Zeke deal last season. And this is going to be a bigger trade. It's going to be probably the biggest trade we've ever seen, because outside of Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson is probably the number 2 dynasty quarterback in my mind. Regardless, he's 25, 26 years old. The dude's got a career in front of him. Tom Brady's like 100. So Deshaun Watson, I mean, he's got at least 20 more years in him, something like that. So
no, yeah. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Deshaun Watson. Just real quick, let me just address this. Was the expectation that Eric Bieniemy was going to be the coach? I mean, is that kind of what you were thinking up until yesterday?
So, as a Texans fan, as I've been narrating through this entire pod right now, stream, it's an up and down. It's a roller coaster. You're so close to greatness. First, I wanted the Jets head coach, Robert Saleh, right? He's
I
been.
was going to say Adam Gase for a second, and I was about to just cut the stream off. Like we were just going to be done right there. If you wanted Adam Gase, it was just going to be over.
Adam Gase. There's a special place in my heart for Adam Gase, and it's nowhere near the top. I'll tell you that. But Roberts he's had time with the Texans. He's a defensive-minded guy. I really like defense. Obviously, defense win championships, as the Buccaneers will show the Kansas City Chiefs next week. But it's regardless, neither here nor there. That didn't happen. And then Bieniemy, all signs pointed to him. After the Super Bowl, it would happen. Blah blah blah. And Texans fans are extremely excited. Yes, Bieniemy will come in. He will wrangle in Deshaun for Deshaun to stay. But that didn't happen yet again, being a Texans fan. So it two-way street, I suppose. It is what it is, and you can't ever predict it, I guess. It just kind of sucks a little bit. Hurts.
Well, so this is a theory that I've got about Deshaun Watson. Nobody agrees with me. Feel free to tell me I'm an idiot and that I'm wrong on this. So Deshaun Watson, what's interesting about him is that Deshaun Watson has a no trade clause, meaning the Cleveland Browns could offer the Texans 25 first round picks and Deshaun Watson could just say no. So he's got all the leverage. There's almost now the Texans could just decide that they're just going to fine him when he doesn't show up for training camp and just say like, okay, no, we're not going to trade you if they don't get the offer that they like. But at some point, I almost feel like, yes, you're right. What's he worth? He's worth a lot. But could the no trade clause complicate things? And could this be a situation where, we've seen Texans trades before where they don't quite get the return that they wanted? Could this end up, because of the no trade clause, being another situation like that? Oh, your mic's on mute.
My guys who are watching this know I do about 3 times a show. It's rookie move, but it happens all the time to me.
Matt does too. Don't worry about
it. So first, absolutely. That is, being a Texans fan, like I mentioned throughout the stream, like the worst thing that could happen will probably happen to the Texans. Everyone's built the narrative, and in my mind too, this is where I'm going with, right? The Texans are going to trade Deshaun to Miami, get the 3rd, get the 18th, get some seconds, blah, 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 do some shuffling with the roster, make it work for the cap. And what's probably going to happen is he's going to go to the Jets, and we're going to get the number 2 pick, and we're going to get an offensive lineman at number 2. That's probably what's going to happen.
I certainly think it could. I actually sort of think that the Jets thing was a little bit of a red herring, just because like it was built on the premise that Deshaun Watson wanted to go to the Jets, which makes zero sense to me. And I don't think is there a connection there?
There's a connection there to the Jets.
Okay.
Old boy, his Whataburger homie, carpooling it up together, James Harden.
Oh, really?
James Harden did the exact same thing to the Rockets that Deshaun Watson is doing now. You got to think there's some continuity between these two guys who lived in the same town for so long, being the superstar guys that they are. They had to run in the same circles, and they had to talk over drinks or something like that over dinner at least, right? So, it worked out. It worked out for Harden and the Rockets. The Rockets, we need to get some of these Rockets front office people over here for the Texans, because they kind of cleaned house shipping Harden out. So hopefully something like that can happen with the Texans to Miami and make everybody happy, because like we just keep on saying, Deshaun Watson's a generational talent. So
yeah. So I guess let's go quarterback right there. Let's just say, in your gut, opening day 2021, who's the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans?
From the SEC, the Rolling Tide from the University of Alabama, Tua Tagovailoa, baby, rocking number 1 on the roster, number 1 on his back, and number 1 in our hearts.
No, I like that, and I actually think there was a case to be made that that Chan Gailey really held him back. I know like his value is depressed a little bit right now, but Chan Gailey really did. It just seemed like he didn't trust him very much. Didn't let him throw the ball down the field. Didn't let the reins off. And with the Houston Texans team, presumably in some sort of a rebuild, you could certainly see them, giving him a little bit more to do, like letting him throw the ball 35, 40 times a game, potentially even, like being able to push the ball down the field. Tim Kelly seems great. Pep Hamilton would be great to work with him. I mean, it seems like it'd be a great fit. Now, let's just say, go with the popular narrative and they end up with the 3rd pick and the 18th pick as well. If you've got Tua and you've got 3 and 18, what would you like to see the Texans do in the draft?
Super unpopular opinion right now in my circle, at least at Belly Up Fantasy, is we take Tua, right? And you got to look at the body of work that David has done and what he's done with the Aggies, with the Ravens, with the Chiefs when he was there as wide receiver coach. At the number 3 pick, along with free agency moves and things like that, the Texans will take Najee Harris.
Oh, wow.
And it's going to be a rebuild from the ground up. Get at the 18th pick, get Jalen Waddle, and let's keep them all together. I mean, if that happens, Houston Texans fans will be dancing in the streets, chugging beers and high-fiving everyone left and right. Najee Harris, another guy who, from film at least, is phenomenal. By the numbers, he even better. Alabama just knows what they're doing with their running backs, and this kid he's like what I comp him to Derrick Henry, right? Just because of his build, his athleticism, what he can do in the running game, how he just bulldozes people over. And that's what Tua needs. I don't know if Tua is going to throw it 40 times a game, and I don't want him to. I want him to throw play actions, move the pocket a little bit, let him free flow a little bit, but we need a running game in Houston. That's what our division is. You got the Colts, you got the Titans, and you got the Jaguars, who will all have solid running games. In this division, without a solid running game, we're not winning it, so we're not going to see the postseason. We need to win the running game right now. So Najee Harris, Tua, Waddle, come on down to Houston. We'll go to Deshaun Watson's restaurant.
Yeah. Plus, it would be so much fun to have Trevor Lawrence and Tua in the same division going against each other twice. That would be like really cool just for football. Like,
I just got goosebumps.
So I like what you say about Najee Harris. You don't think that they could get him with like the 18th pick or something like, like.
Of course they could. I mean, I want to stand out a little bit and just, a little bit, right? But number 3, you can always trade down and everything like that. But the way that the Texans are going right now, they're not asking for help. They're doing it. I mean, I guess they're asking for help, but they're just doing what they want to do, kind of Jerry Jones gunslinger style. What does Jerry Jones do? He's going to take the best player available, no matter what anyone says, sitting on his yacht out in the middle of the ocean, right? Najee Harris, Billy Witt, congratulations. You beat me to this because I was all about ETN. That was my dude, 1.01. More study on Najee, and he's going to be Derrick Henry, the next Derrick Henry.
So one of the things that I'll remember about this Texans season is, at the very end, you've got Deshaun Watson walking off the field. You've got J.J. Watt walking off with him in a very touching moment where J.J. Watt says, "Man, I'm sorry we didn't do better for you." And J.J. Watt has meant a lot to that city. I mean, like, I'm not too far from you. I'm from New Orleans. I actually, for work, will spend a lot of time in Houston. So, we're going to have to hook up at some point.
Hey, let's go. Bourbon, baby. I love it.
Yeah. But, I remember the hurricane, and I remember all the money that J.J. Watt raised. And I remember, just all the great things that he does for the city of Houston. And now there's rumors about him maybe being traded too. What's going to hurt worse, Deshaun Watson or J.J. Watt being traded?
In my mind, Deshaun Watson's already packed his bags and he's gone, so we've already set sail on that one. JJ would be absolutely devastating to the city of Houston, the state of Texas as well. I mean, the dude has his own Bluebell ice cream after him. If ever anyone who doesn't know what Bluebell means to a Texan, it's very sacred. Bluebell ice cream, absolutely phenomenal, beats the rest in our minds. So he has his own flavor. That's crazy, right? I mean, the dude is. HEB as well. You know what HEB is, right? He's like a part owner of HEB. So, God, that would I would never turn my back on the Texans because the Texans are my team. But it would be that at that point, if JJ Watt was traded, that would be the day that I would cry. Like, that would be so bad that I would cry, like a baby.
And it kind of depends on if they go to full rebuild or not, I think. And I think. if they can, do something that, I guess I'm not expecting and end up with that kind of a haul that Deshaun Watson deserves, then maybe they don't need to go into kind of a full rebuild, and maybe they can sort of turn the page and wind up. Well, if they do turn the page, I assume that a guy who is now a free agent under a little bit of controversy, we'll say, to end the season, Will Fuller, would he be a part of the plans for the Texans?
Probably not. I mean, he hasn't played a full season ever for the Texans, really. He's a wide receiver 1, no doubt. First round talent out of Notre Dame, right? 4.3 speed, hands unbelievable. Learned from D-Hop, has the sensei mentality, so he's a teacher as well. But if a guy can't stay on the field, and if he's going to get suspended to stay on the field, I mean, you got to kind of evaluate what you're going to do. And I feel like bringing in the new GM, the new head coach, it's going to be a rebuild from the ground up and a culture change as well. So sorry, Will Fuller, you were my boy, Will Fuller 5 out of Notre Dame, man. I scouted this kid. I've watched everything. He was everything to me. And I thought him and Nuke were just going to light it. And they did light it up. But I mean, the best trait for any football player, any player in general, any athlete is availability.
Yeah.
So, availability. If you're not there, man, I'm sorry. Like, I just can't do it. So I think
that does make sense. And I think, it's not like the cupboard is bare with wide receivers if you do let them go. All. I mean, that, I really like Kiki Cutie. There's a lot of very interesting names, and maybe even more. Like, who are some of your favorites? Obviously, Brandon Cooks is good, and we know about Randall Cobb, but who are some of your other favorites maybe on that team that you think could step in and under the right situation produce for us?
So obviously Brandon Cooks, wide receiver 1, like you mentioned, right? There's no need to talk about him. Over 1,000 yards yet again. No doubt in my mind that if we bring in a quarterback like Tua, he will have 980,000 yards at least next year as well. But Kiki Cutie, man, the legend of Kiki Cutie. One of your questions earlier on I don't know if we're going to get to it, obviously, because of time, but who was my player? Who was the Brian Edwards Award, right? Kiki Cutie was my guy. We saw what he did last year in the playoffs or in the postseason run, and this year as well. 3 touchdowns. The overall body of work was not very good in PPR formatting, the wide receiver 95. But what you look at is his expected points. So shout out to FF Spaceman as well. Dave Wright, man, amazing guy, amazing cat. So his expected points overall were 30 something points. He barely made that. So he exceeded expectations. He didn't let you down of where you picked him up because you didn't draft him. And I think he will ascend. He's got really good moves. Ian Coulter, out of Rhode Island, baby. Dynasty Vipers with that. I love it. He's actually on one of my dynasty teams in the MDF Master Drafter League. Super good talent. Yeah. Wow. I don't even have him in my notes, but yes, you are so correct. Wow. Shame on me for that. And I'm a Darren Fells guy as well. Big post style tight end and you mentioned Chan Gailey earlier. Chan Gailey never has had a tight end who's been a top 5 guy ever in his career. So that really hurt Tua as well. Because that safety blanket, I think Darren Fells is that guy, along with Jordan Akins as well. But Darren Fells, Akins. Akins, yeah. They're 1A, 1B in the tight end landscape. They're probably like 7A, 7B, but regardless. Right. Kiki Cutie as well. What I really want to talk to you about, though, and pick your brain is, how about these guys, though? And I know who I'm going to talk about right now is going to be Zach Cunningham and Dylan Cole, Charles Amenahu, and Lonnie Johnson Jr. on the defensive side. These guys, we got to keep them. We got to pay them. Those guys right there will be the building blocks of our defense. And what do you think about them? Because those guys made me super excited to see them play this year.
I think you said it all right there. And I think that's the important point to be made. I know enough about IDP to, wait, here we go. Hang on.
Oh,
the Dingus may join us, and so you mentioned IDP, and yes, I think we are a great source for IDP. Matt is the IDP guy. Matt loves IDP. Talks about I like playing IDP. I do know those names that you mentioned. I know that they're good and they're a defense that you want to build around. I don't know near the amount that Matt does, so. He may be setting up his background to join us, and when he does, I want him to comment on that. I want to ask you about running back because when I was thinking through the Texans, and then obviously they with the new head coach, he's got some experience with a running back that was cut that could bring some veteran leadership. Literally one of the best locker room guys in all of the NFL in Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram was, here in
another Alabama guy.
Yeah, another former Alabama guy. He's a guy that I really think somebody is going to pick him up, and he is that hype man. He is that guy that can really just help out young players, and would be a great addition. Maybe it's him, maybe it's not, but are there some of these guys that when the running back David Johnson? I think it's time to move on, right?
The thing with David Johnson is we might not find a suitor for him. And we're on the hook for $13 million for this cat. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's going to be a pretty tough sell for David Johnson. But yeah, Mark Ingram, come on, baby, let's go.
Are there any other running backs, I guess, that you've noticed, maybe you've scouted or just in the free agent market that you think might be a good addition for the team?
I mean, where our salary cap is right now, I wouldn't really want to add too much, especially at running back, with my mind made up that we're going to get Tua, that we're going to get the third, we're going to get the 18th, right? But if we're going to add one, it's definitely going to be Mark Ingram. And I mean, it's going to be a trio, a three-headed backfield, because we're on the hook right now with David Johnson for all that money. And Duke Johnson, Randy on him, boys. He's serviceable, and we only have a contract with him for like $4 million. So him and Duke and Mark Ingram would be an excellent three-headed monster, just like what David likes. So I think that's gonna be the thing. And if we don't get Mark Ingram, it's gonna be very telling. And like I said, it's gonna be dominoes, right? As soon as one thing happens, the whole narrative is gonna come down. But speculation is that, I mean, we probably take a running back in the draft if we can get it.
You mentioned IDP, and it sounds like maybe Matt's ears perked up and jumped on the stream here. Welcome, Matt. What do you have for us this evening?
I got not a whole lot. The background was driving me crazy. It was like a little busy there. So I actually was just kind of trying to sneak in through the back and kind of fix up the back picture a little bit. Like the 3-man system looks good with the eyes there. So I was trying to get that. But I'm just here. Dr. Dingus is in the house. It sounds like the therapy's been going really good so far.
Very, very well.
It sounds like you kind of come to grips with what's going on right now, and the reality is starting to set in. It's not a tearjerker kind of thing quite yet. There is hope. Now we look at this. The Texans don't have a whole lot of cap space either. They're like, and here's the kicker: we don't talk about this enough, but because there's no TV revenues this year, that cap is coming down from what we see right now. The projected. My understanding is, and I need Jason Waltner here. He's my boy when it comes to capology. Is we're looking at about $18 million drop off in the cap coming. So whatever number you think you see, deduct 18 million from that. Now, flipping over to the IDP, there's some nice little pieces there. Obviously, JJ Watt is JJ Watt. And as an NFL fan, you're kind of torn between, and even probably as a Texans fan, if you're in a rebuild, if you go into retool mode, like a two and some picks and stuff, it's one thing. But if you go full rebuild, does J.J. Watt become expendable? Not only because you want to see him succeed, but because you can get something for him right now. It's kind of a catch-22. I refer to this as what I call the Ray Bork in the National Hockey League, who played so many years for the Boston Bruins, never got a sniff other than in 1992 Stanley Cup Finals against the Edmonton Oilers. Never got that sniff, and then he got traded to Colorado for his one and done season in Colorado where he won the Cup. Is this something Houston could possibly do for J.J. Watt? Maybe get some value back. Who knows? But on the flip side, you guys do have Benardrick McKinney, who was injured this year that no one's talking about because of that injury. We know it was at Cunningham's abilities. That secondary, though, that's where there's some big issues in that secondary, especially at the corner position. So when you're addressing this draft, unfortunately, there's no draft picks here, but you need to rebuild that defense. Can this new coach come in? He's supposed to be a player's coach. He's not by enemy or anything like that. It's going to be an interesting dynamic on what they go. And if we know anything about your ownership, he can be about as stubborn as they come. And I would not put it past him to be, you know what? Don't play then. I can see him doing that. Being, you know what? Here's your we're going to fine you $50,000 of practice you missed. We're going to fine you this. We're going to fine you that. They can and if he retires, if Deshaun Watson tries to pull that retire card, the Houston Texans actually save about $21 million on the cap. So we talk about leveraging. This is an interesting one here because I know McNair, is it McNair? Bob yes. McNair?
Yeah.
Bob and
you know he is one of the most stubborn owners when it comes to in the National Football League. I could see him putting his foot down and say, you know what? I don't care if we get anything for him. You're going to sit. I could actually see him being one of the few owners that would pay him not to play instead of giving into his demands. So where is the new GM and the ownership on this? This is something that they would have had to talk about prior to bringing in the GM, because we know Deshaun Watson wasn't part of those conversations. Anyway, on to the defense here. Well, there are some nice pieces.
Let me just, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. When you talk about the defense, they just brought in Lovie Smith. Obviously, that's a guy we were familiar with. We know a lot about Lovie Smith defenses. And Matt, I know you know a lot about what he would bring to the table. You know, do you like what would you expect from a Lovie Smith defense there in Houston?
A Lovie Smith defense, you're only as good as the pieces around you. And right now they've got some aging assets. Whitney Mercilus, he's hitting up a $12 million cap right now. He's a guy who could be a cap casualty here. They may pay him not to play for him next year because that $12 million is a huge, especially if we have to try and get some pieces out of there. Towards the end of the season, the name slipping me right now. They brought in a young guy, kind of filled in for McKendrick. Played very well for you guys down the stretch. He actually came in. I think he was probably leading the team in tackles. Actually, it was probably I can't remember the name. The name's slipping me right now.
Dylan Cole?
No, I don't think it was Cole. I'm not thinking of. If the name pops up, he was like an IDP savior. I never got a piece of him, but I'm trying to pull up, see if I can see what his name is here now.
No, he had 106 tackles. So I did the research last night on. Did you what?
Was it Cole? Is that who I'm thinking of?
I'm pulling it up right now because I did it last night. I don't know why I didn't write it down. I know he had 106 tackles.
Dylan Cole was big a couple of years ago when we had the same situation there in Houston with injuries to linebacker core.
Man, if
it's
anybody
crazy what Houston linebacker core is done with like practice squad guys, wild.
We don't do any fact checking around here, so just say it. If it's Cole, just like, hey, yeah, it's Cole.
No, Zach Cunningham.
No, Zach Cunningham. Yeah, he was going to get his part. There's a guy who came in, Zach Cunningham. I'm trying to think. Was it Jake Martin?
Jake Martin, 20 tackles, 13 solos, 3 breakups.
Anyway, we know all about what Zach Cunningham can do. We know Bernard McKinney can do his thing. It's that cornerback position that they really need to address. You got Justin Reed in the back end, who's a very good, talented himself. I would love to see them actually go out and get the other Reed, bring in Eric Reed, and you got a combination in the back end. Eric Reed's a guy who I don't know why he didn't get a shot this year, but he's definitely a guy who has the talent to be playing. But when you're looking at Lonnie Johnson, Keon Crossan, John Reed, Brandon Williams, Mark Fields, I will target those guys all day, every day, and twice on Sunday, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep. No, that's so honestly, like this show went a lot better than I thought. Like it does seem like Houston has kind of got themselves to a place where they've kind of accepted what's going on. They understand. They're looking forward with some really great anticipation. There might be, I think, some stumbling blocks in the way. I know that McNair can can be stubborn, but I don't know. I still feel like Deshaun Watson holds the power in the situation, and it's going to be really. There's a lot of news, a lot of drops that could come along, and who knows? Like, we could honestly be sitting here in 6 months, and the Texans could have had the best offseason of anybody, right?
So
I mean, they land Tua and a couple of first round picks, and they pick up is the offensive lineman in the draft is Sewell.
Well,
Matt?
so offensive linemen that are available that I really like is Russell Okung, and then Big Sed out of Texas A&M. They're both unrestricted free agents, both first round talents. Both of them can be had for about $2 million a piece. Obviously, you got to move Watson, and then you got to move some other pieces. Like, I mean, if we could move David Johnson, that'd be phenomenal. But we got to shore up that offensive line too. So I think in the free, like Dr. Dingus said, in free agency, we're gonna have to make some moves, and then I really think that shortened cap or that smaller cap is gonna put I guess the squeeze on some of these unrestricted free agents to take maybe a lower cut for a year deal or something like that.
Well, you guys aren't the only ones feeling it. There's teams like Pittsburgh. We talked about that a couple shows ago. Bud Dupree, his name's going to come up as an edge rusher. He's going to free agency. Pittsburgh's not going to be able to sign him. Maybe that's a target for the Texans. But going back to Dr. Dingus here, I want to see put your pulse on the Houston Texans right now. We've already gone through the shock 7 stages of grief. We've already gone through shock. That kind of went, we're breaking up. Then we went through the denial stage where, no, Deshaun would never go. Texans would never trade him. Anger, everyone in Houston already went through the anger stage. Bargaining is the next stage in this. And we're kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe. We've seen it. Okay, if we trade Deshaun Watson to the Jets, if we're picks 2 and picks 22, and they throw in Sam Darnold, we're at the bargaining. And then you kind of go into the depression stage, and you're like, oh, this is going to get bad. So I think we, as Texans fans, we've gone through those first 5 stages. Now we're at the testing stage. The testing stage is basically seeking realistic solutions. And we're kind of coming up to the draft. I think that's where we are as Texans fans right now. We're in the testing phase of the 7 stages of grief. We're not quite to acceptance yet. We don't want to accept this for what it is. So we're kind of in between that testing and that acceptance. We've gone through the other 5. We've only got 2 more stages to go through. Only 2 more. Man, I should be a doctor, really.
I'm saying I feel so much better. I mean, I should be on a couch right now, guys.
This is free therapy. Free therapy.
My wife always said I need to get therapy, so here we go. Here we go.
Well, hey, one more time. I think that's going to do it for the show. But tell us where we can find you, what you're working on at Belly Up Sports. Plug everything that you got going on.
First and foremost, thank you guys for having me on here. Everyone who's listening, everyone who's following, everyone who's in the comments, things like that, or who's going to watch this later, you need to follow these guys at Dynasty Vipers. They know what they're talking about. First class guys as well. I mean, show sheet out a week in advance. It's a a pleasure to work with you for sure. Very professional. Love it. I would hope to come back someday. But then, guys, you can always find me at Aggie Kappa Sig on Twitter, on social medias. I'm normally housed over at the Belly Up Fantasy Live site or Belly Up Fantasy, Belly Up Sports as well. We are what they aren't. So come check us out, see what we have. We take a different twist on some things on our main site. Fantasy, we keep it really, really lit, though. Myself, Ryan, Tom, and Billy, we're holding it down for fantasy football, moving on to Dynasty right now. Going to talk to you guys about IDP because obviously we need to get into that a little bit more. But, guys, I mean, I can talk about myself all day, but you guys are the stars. So thank you guys for having me on.
And make sure you contribute to his GoFundMe for a new green screen. I mean, that's we got to.
It's a light bulb. No, remember my light broke. It's the green screen's fine. It's the shoddy lights that I had to work with today.
Matt, what you got going on? You got a lot.
The name I was thinking of was Terrell Adams.
Gotcha.
Terrell Adams, 75 tackles, 45 solo, 122 on the button there. So I knew there was a linebacker that kind of came out. I couldn't quite phase him. I'm actually going to turn this back over to you, Calvin. What do you got this week? What do we got left here for this week for the Spotlight Series?
Well, that basically does us for the week. I mean, we may have a surprise one tomorrow. That's kind of in the works, but we have something that's not quite a team spotlight, but kind of. I've got tomorrow at 2:00 Central Time. So 3:00 Eastern. I've got Christian Garrick, who is a New Orleans, famous guy here. Everybody knows him and loves him. He's the afternoon drive home guy on AM radio. So every town has a guy like that, somebody that they tune into and listen to. He's on the radio every day with Bobby Hebert, the Cajun Cannon, who again is another just huge personality here in New Orleans. So I'm going to get a chance to talk to him. I'm going to talk about Drew Brees. Obviously, we're going to talk about Taysom Hill. We're going to talk about the possibility of Matt Stafford or, any of these other quarterbacks, like some of the rumors are. And how do you overcome having $100 million over the cap? Like, how do you overcome that? And what happens if you just decide no, Goodell, I'm not doing it. I'm not getting under the cap. What does he do? I don't know. Are you banned from the league? Do you have to go away? I don't know. I'm not sure the rules are clear on that. But yeah. Next week, we got some great shows too. Obviously, Twitter at Calvin and Hobby for the spotlights. But we got some very exciting shows on the Behind the Grind series, which that is Matt's baby. Matt, tell us what we got going on in the next week or so.
So before we get into next week, Friday, tomorrow, we're going to recap the Senior Bowl with Devi Kane. He's coming on. John Vogel's coming on. Eric's coming on. We have a few surprise guests if they get back to where they need to be, jumping on. Some guys that are a lot smarter than I am, kind of a little bit of a Reese's panel, so to speak. So you're going to want to check that out if you're into rookie drafts and stuff like that. Some of these guys are down there in Mobile checking it out. Then we come back on Tuesday with my friend of the show, Sal Pal 2. He's coming on. Everyone loves Sal. He's one of the best guys on Twitter. You're going to want to check him out. Wednesday afternoon, we're going to hit you with the one and only Adam Rank. He's going to be joining us. Yeah, Adam Rank. He's coming on from the NFL Network. We're going to have him coming on, but that's not it. We are going to keep pumping the material out on Wednesday, and we're going to bring in football diehards own Bob Harris will be joining us in the evening. Woo. So we got a little bit of a doubleheader going on there, and you're going to want to make sure you're tuning in because we've got a who's who list of people coming on the show over this off season here. We got guys from Mike Wright all the way to Matt Harmon. Man, I can't even think of these names that we've got here right now. Let me just flip my calendar around. James Coe, Liz Loza. We got, you name them, we got them. So you're going to want to make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and all that other jazz. You're going to make sure you check it out. And we're definitely going to have Mr. Aggie Kappa Sig back on the show at some point. So you're going to want to check that out. Don't know when, but I think it can be done.
Absolutely, Chris. You were great. I appreciate you spending your time talking about the Texans, and there's going to be a lot more things that come up. So hopefully we'll get a chance to catch up once we know how this offseason goes for the Texans. And really appreciate you taking your time. For Chris, for Matt, shout out to Bob Gilchrist too, who did spend a lot of time putting together these the backgrounds and the different things that we're doing around the show. Bob is the true star behind the scenes. Really appreciate what he's doing. He's coming on for the Patriots next week too, by the way.
You're definitely not going to want to miss the Bob Father.
No, you're not going to want to miss the Bob Father at all. So for these guys, for Houston Texans, hey, we just say